But anyway, let's move on to wide receivers and see what that struggle is like. Is it really a struggle? You know, I know there was a point to where, you know, Cowboy fans have gotten spoiled with the 3 usable options, I guess. You know, it was this idea that, okay, well, if Gallup is a wide receiver 1,
it's false.
You know what I'm saying? And Ceedee Lamb is a wide receiver 1, and Amari Cooper's a wide receiver 1. Like, I wonder if people have created that as like a new standard for how they want their wide receiver cores to be for the rest of the way. And it's an interesting thought process, right? Because there are a handful of teams that, you know, have 3 wide receiver talents across the board. You know, Cincinnati was one. You know, boy T Higgins, you know, Jamar, whatever, right? But I wonder, for the most part, do most teams have 3 wide receiver talent? You know, the Eagles got like 2. You know, and I mean the Buffalo Bills down to just rookie starting, like just rookie draft pick. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, it's. I can't look at my Dallas Cowboys and be like, why don't we have 3 stars or at least 3 Pro Bowl talents at wide receiver? Now, I will say this. If you're going to be an offense that throws the ball 40 to 50 times, it might help. Did you
hear what I said?
If you're going to throw the ball 40 to 50 times, it might help to have 3 options that you really, really like. You know, to where you can go 11 personnel and win any of your matchups across the board. That'll be a fantastic thing if that's the case, right? That ain't always the case. So just like I mentioned in my previous videos, you know, sometimes your first guy can hold like extra weight with you to where, you know, your first wide receiver is gonna grade much heavily than your 12th wide receiver. Okay, let me just make that big for the old men in the back with the bad eyes. The OGs with the bad eyes in the back. Go ahead and make that a little big for y'all. Now, Ceedee Lamb is one of the best wide receivers in the league. Top three wide receivers in the league. He was top 3 in all important wide receiver metrics. He was up there with Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson and all that. He surpassed some of the other guys that they try to call better than Ceedee Lamb, but it's what it is. And I believe he was number 1 in receptions or something like that. So, all right, cool. Bet. So, Ceedee Lamb in this group is going to carry a bunch of weight for you already. He's already an A++ guy. If you're an anime person or RPG, JRPG guy, he's an S tier player. He's higher than A tier, right? Because he's one of the top 3 players in the league at his position. Ceedee Lamb is. Now you have to give a breakdown for Brandon Cooks, and I think we've had this conversation before. That offense was goofy for the first 6 or so weeks, but you have to look at Brandon Cooks and how he ended the season, and not how he started. Because how Brandon Cooks started the season was ridiculous, you know, and he didn't pass 1,000 yards. But Brandon Cooks, and y'all can fact check me on this because I've been trying to be factual this whole series. Has there been a receiver that caught for 600 yards but got 8 touchdowns? Who did that? Has there been a receiver to ever do that? Let me get the exacts real quick. Specifically, Brandon Cooks. Okay. Let me get the details here. 8 touchdowns, pretty ridiculous. That's top 10, by the way. That's top 10 in scores, but 8 touchdowns, 657 yards. He got 81 targets, 54 catches. And I can only imagine that number would be a little bit higher because I try to hold Dak accountable too. People say I don't. But Dak missed some deep balls on the side of the field, on the left side of the field, throwing to Brandon Cooks, right? But the one pass that Brandon Cooks didn't miss when Dak Prescott was throwing to him was that back corner in the end zone. Like Cook just didn't miss them. Brandon Cooks did not miss the back corner, the back right, back left, whatever. The seam work. Brandon Cooks just simply did not miss those. And that's how he ended up with, let me do the count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So all his touchdowns came after the San Fran game. So Chargers game and back. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. So he got 8 touchdowns in his last 12 games. How do we replicate that but catch on the misses, right? How do we replicate that and catch on the misses? One way to do that is to pick up where you left off last year. If the Cowboys offense started getting good in the middle of the season last year and they ended where they wanted to end, I ain't talking about Green Bay, I'm talking about Washington game. Like they ended where they wanted to end last year. Then if Brandon Cooks, just imagine if Brandon Cooks just caught all the deep balls that Dak missed on. That's at least another 300 yards and 4 touchdowns? I'm just projecting 900 yards and 12 touchdowns. That's a good year for wide receiver too. But if I'm being honest in this assessment, it hasn't happened. So I can't make an account for it and it hasn't happened, right? I can be like, must be nice. Life Jennings voice. I could be like, must be nice if that were to happen. If we continue to build on successes from last year, that would be nice. Life Jennings voice. But it hasn't happened. So projection Voch says this. Projection Voch says that Brandon Cooks definitely got to get more than 600 yards last year. It makes sense. Will he get 8 touchdowns next year? I don't know. Because Jake Ferguson's coming to party. And Ezekiel Elliott is coming to party as a short yardage back. Him and Hunter Lipke are coming as short yardage backs. So Brandon Cooks may get less touchdowns, but he may get more yards. But long story short, I think Brandon Cooks is going to be a better wide receiver than he was last year, simply because the offense as a whole should be better this year than it was last year, because it was slipping. If I had to give a grade for Brandon Cooks, I mean, projection Voch says that Brandon Cooks could be a B+. Last year, I feel like a B+ is too much for a 650-yard receiver. But what would you give an 8 touchdown receiver? Chat, answer that question for me right now. I want to know. Chat, comment section. What grade do you give a receiver that only caught 650 yards worth of passes? C- maybe, D+, I don't know. That's like a cool third receiver. Now, what do you grade a receiver that caught 8 touchdowns, which is top 10, by the way? He's tied for 8th. What receiver what do you rank a receiver that caught 8 touchdowns? What do you call him? It's like an A- guy. It's like an A- guy. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it'll only make sense to say that Brandon Cooks is a C. I'll give it a flat C with room to grow to a B+, assuming that he gets to where he has to be. But 8 touchdowns ain't nothing to sneeze at. Then the whole Jalen Brooks versus Jalen Tolbert thing. I talked about this plenty on my own show. Talked about it with Foots, Marcus Mosher, me and Brian Broaddus. We've had this conversation a bunch. So I don't think that there's very much more for me to say about this Tolbert versus Jalen Brooks conversation. You know, one is a much better fit, which is Jalen Brooks. One is maybe a better receiver in Tolbert, but it's just that you want to limit the redundancies, right? Michael Gallup left, so you need an X receiver. Jalen Brooks is that, Tolbert is not. The problem with the redundancies that Jalen Tolbert is what Ceedee Lamb is. Just Ceedee Lamb's much better at it, you know. But Tolbert's a move around guy, play out the slot guy, can play flanker sometimes guy. That's what, you know. So there comes your redundancy. But the big question is, what are we gonna do with Kevontae Turpin? You know, Kevontae Turpin had some big plays in the run game. He caught a touchdown versus the 49ers, and we just stopped using him, you know. And I acknowledge that he's one of our more bursty players, explosive players, big play players. But if you can't use them every week, then what's the point of him being your most explosive player, bursty player, big play players? If you can't use him, then he's not those things. But I think the Cowboys are definitely going to try to work him into that situation, and we'll see. Ryan Flournoy, we'll see. David Durden tore his ACL, so that kind of gave him a little out to come back next year. But Cowboys liked him, man. I just want to see. David Durden was supposed to be this athletic freak that fell through the cracks because he played for like Southwest Florida State Community College. You know what I'm saying? Some little bitty school that I never heard of that they definitely don't have film on. But he got hurt. Racing McGrath. I don't know what that is. Jalen Moreno Cropper, we'll see. Maybe he's going to work his way into the team's conversation. Corey Crooms caught some passes in camp. Cam Johnson, Tyron Billy Johnson. Those three names don't even look like they go together. Those three names don't even look like they go together. Some people that put the hyphen in the last name because they got two last names. Tyron got two first names. Tyron Billy Johnson. Is this people last name just Billy or something? Like, was this real? Like, was his other name just Tyron Billy? His mom got married or something and ended up being Johnson. So I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man, I ain't finna sit up here and talk about his name or whatever. But Tyron Billy Johnson is another one of those veteran dudes that's just gonna be on the roster. But I think whenever Dak Prescott's throwing the football, all these dudes look good in camp. The problem is, in camp and in preseason, Trey Lance gonna be throwing the ball a bunch. So now your life is in Trey Lance's hands. Good luck to y'all for that, because he fighting for his too. So I mean, it may work out, but most likely these first six dudes are going to be your guys. The wide receiver core is heavily carried by Ceedee Lamb, so I think you can say B- for wide receiver core, right? The rest of those guys bring down Lamb's number, to be fair, but Lamb's catching 80% of the targets anyway. So if he's accounted for 80% of the wide receiver grade, hell, your wide receiver room may be an A+. You never know. Who knows?